Hello, this is the third painting lesson, and in this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to paint a city block or a city street where you have a couple of buildings. Before getting started, I wanted to make sure to review the painting process. First, I need a plan. What am I going to do? And this is particularly important for a painting of a city street. If I just try to throw it on randomly, it will look terrible. It won't work. So I need a plan. I need a composition. Where is everything going? Number two, I need to sketch it in. Today I'm going to use a pencil when I'm sketching it in, because that way, you think about, oh, okay, if I need to erase a part and fix it, I can fix it. And you really want to make sure that the sketch in portion of it is done correctly for this type of painting. Otherwise everything will look weird, like, oh, things are floating or it doesn't belong there. So it's really important to make sure the perspective that's showing in the picture is correct. And then we'll do some block in, we'll mix some colors. Last time I was showing how to mix the color, so we could look at our color chart and decide, okay, what color is this, what color is this, and then lastly add the details like the windows or plants or little pieces on there. But the most important part is start with the correct perspective. So today I've got two pictures underneath right now that you can see. These two pictures. One is the local city street. It's close to where I live. I picked this because it's easy for me to get to, and the buildings look kind of interesting here on the street. Okay, the next one is a painting sketch that I did while I was out sitting on a bench looking down this street. So, step one, thinking about composition. Where are the parts and how is your eye going into the painting? If you are doing a painting of a street, then naturally there will be the street that guides our eyes into the picture. So you can see how the left and right side of the street, the lines get closer and closer together as they are getting farther and farther down the road. And so it guides our eye into the picture. And if the perspective on the buildings is correct, it also guides our eye down the road into the picture as well. So first, let me show you a couple of common problems to avoid. Because we think of, we might think, oh, this is what a street looks like and it will be exactly like this. Oh, but wait. It doesn't end up like that if I use correct perspective. Turn it. Let me adjust the camera a bit. Okay. And I'm going to show a small version of what happens sometimes. So, this is not a good paper to draw on. Hold on. Okay, so I put a different piece of paper up. That way you can see it a little bit better, and I'm using a marker to show this wrong way around kind of perspective. So this is what not to do to start off with. A lot of times people think, okay, the street, it will go like this. And they make it very, very skinny to start with, and then it's still skinny as it goes back, but it's very small. Oops. When we see the street in perspective, notice how much space it's taking up in the front. In the photo, it's even wider. When I did my painting, you see that I don't have it quite as wide. There are some differences between how the photograph is taking the photo and how the camera sees the picture and how I'm seeing it when I'm there. So there are some of those differences, but you will definitely notice that it has to be much wider. So in the picture, the road is like this wide and then it gets narrower. And in my painting, you see that it's like this, so it's definitely wider, it's not skinny, and then it gets thinner as it goes back. Okay, so problem number 1. Problem number 2. Sometimes people draw the buildings like this. Here's the top of one building, here's the top of another building, and it doesn't look like it's going down the street. Uh-oh. Problem. Perspective problem. What you do want, if you see in the picture, see how the top of the building looks slanted. Oh, okay. It has to be slanted because it's getting small. It looks smaller and smaller as it gets farther and farther away. So I don't want it straight. It needs to be at an angle when it's going down the street. Okay, people do that with trees too, right? The tree that's far away is supposed to be far away down the street, and then they make the tree that's close by the same. Oops. Then it doesn't look like it's going back in space. So perspective is very important. Here, let's do it in more correct perspective so you can see more of what it should look like. So the street starts off bigger and gets smaller. There's an angle, the diagonal angles. Instead of straight, it's diagonal. The street is straight. I know the street is the same width all the way going down the street, right? But when we see it in perspective, it looks like it gets smaller. So then the bottom of the buildings is also at an angle. The top of the buildings is at an angle. That way it looks like it's going down the street. It's getting smaller and smaller. Okay. Big tree in the front. Smaller trees when they go back in space. So if a tree is closer to me, usually it will look bigger. I know trees are not all the same size, but that's a general idea too. Smaller tree, bigger tree. Okay, so those are a couple of basic things to touch on, that when you put in the sketch, you do want to make sure that you are watching the perspective. Okay, another thing about composition is that since we're trying to guide the eye into the picture, anytime you have a street, you don't want the street to go off of the picture. You want it to stay in the picture. That's why I'm using another building on the side to make it so your eye stays in the picture. So if you have a street that's going like this and it's going into the picture, good. If it's going sideways, okay, but not all the way off. If it's going all the way off, then our eye goes psh and leaves the picture, and so that is not as good for composition, because then the viewer goes, okay, I'm looking somewhere else now. Bye-bye. Okay, so let's start with the drawing. I know it's partly covered up, but I am going to make it so that we don't see all of these. So bye-bye to that one, and move this over. Yeah, move it over. Let's see about moving this over so that we can see better, and a little bit smaller. You can still see it right now for the sketch part. Okay. It's helpful to have a ruler because buildings have nice straight lines on them. You don't need a ruler, you just need the edge of something that's flat to make it work. You might notice that there's a stop sign in here. I didn't paint the stop sign, and I'm not going to paint the stop sign in this one either. The reason why is because to me it blocks the vision when I want it to go down the street so that we can see the tree in the background better. So that's an artistic choice, taking the stop sign away. You can have a stop sign there. You can have other things too. Cars, people. I'm not showing any people in this photo, but you can still paint little people in there, or cars, or other things on the street as well. Okay, the easiest part I think is the building on the left side. I can point to it. There you can just see the edge of the building. Make a straight line going down. Yeah. Okay, it's going all the way down. Next, the street is lower. So here's the bottom of my picture, here's the top. My street is not starting in the middle. It is starting a bit lower over here. So now I look to see what angle do I have. I look and think, okay, is it this angle? No. This angle, close. This angle, okay, about like this. I'm looking at the left side of the street. This isn't where it's at, but it's the right angle. I'm looking. What angle is it? Now, where is it? It starts here. It ends about here. Let's see. Like that. Yes. About like that. So sidewalk, street, I'm looking. There's a space back here because the street is not going all the way together. It keeps going down the road. But look at the angle. I'm going to use the angle in this photograph because I like it. It looks nice to me. So I'm looking at the angle. Okay, it's not flat like this, right? The angle of the right side of the street, more like this. But I'm over a little ways. Here's where this touches, but I'm starting over here. Right? I leave some space. And I look at what the angle is. By the way, I'm working on an 8 by 10 size. Depending on what size of canvas you have, if you have a very long canvas or a very tall canvas, it will work differently. Right? If I was going to do this, if my canvas was turned vertical, then I have to rethink how am I going to do the composition, because it doesn't work the same, right? If I do the same thing in the vertical, I might have a lot of sky, or maybe I need to find taller buildings. If it was downtown buildings that are very tall, like maybe 10, 20 stories tall, then if the canvas is vertical, it will work better. But this is only 2 stories, so it will work better horizontal. Okay, so here is the angle of the other side of the street. Looking carefully. Okay, so the key is, instead of thinking of the road as the same all the way going back, just think, what is the angle? If you get the angle, you get the correct perspective, no matter where you are or what the object is, right? The right angle, you get the right perspective. Okay, so here's my street. And then I'm going to do the buildings. Notice that there's a sidewalk, so there's a bottom of the buildings, and I can look and see what's the angle of the bottom of the building. It's a little bit trickier because there are things in the way, like planters. But if I just imagine the planters are not there, I'm just looking for the angle. Where is it? How close is it to other things? Okay, and it's about like this, the yellow building. The red building in the background, you won't see that angle quite as much. It's a bit more flat because it's way back. But the bottom of the yellow building, it has that angle to it. Okay, the top, you can see that much easier. The top of the yellow building, it's coming down. So now my angle is going this way. But I think, what is the angle? Is it like this? No, too much. Like this? Close. Very close. Okay, it's going to start, I'm looking at the photo when I'm doing it, like this. I'm going to start here. One tip about composition too, I'm not starting in the corner. I've heard that it's better not to start any of your lines in one of the corners. To make it, if it's going to be in the corner, make it a little bit off of the corner and not exactly on the corner. That it works better, because otherwise our eye will go right to the corner of the picture, but that's not where we want people's eyes to focus, because these lines already go here. So if I add another line, it makes our eye go, oh, I have to go here. No, wait, that's not where I want you to go. Okay. Okay, look carefully at the angle. Look at the angle carefully and think about it. Where is it going? Okay, now I made this line too long, but just giving it enough length so that I can show you what angle it's going, and then I will make a vertical line coming down for the edge of the building. You'll see that the yellow building, there's two parts to it, right? There's the part over here, but then there's a shorter part over here. So I need the vertical part, then I need another angled part that's going back. It's not exactly horizontal, because if I do that, right, if I do the flat top building, it will not look like it's going back in space. Okay, so vertical. It is about 1/3 in to my picture. I'm measuring with my eyes, but I can measure with my pencil, right? How tall is it versus how wide? Or in this case, I can think I'm splitting it. If I split this picture into thirds vertically, okay, it's close. It's a little bit more than 1/3 in. I could even use my ruler and try to measure. It might help, right? Right, if I go, okay, 10, divided by 3. Math problem. Just kidding. Okay. Okay, let's see. And let me check, right? If it looks right. Here, it might help if I go like this. And I think, does it look right? Not exactly. Not exactly. Because the photo I'm working from is a little bit wider than my canvas. So I am squeezing it a bit. So it's not exact. Okay, so next one. But if you don't like it, you're like, oh, it's wrong. Okay, then, fix it. Either you crop the photo or you change the canvas. One or the other. Make it work the way you want it to work so that it looks like it's going down the street. Okay. Next one. The other yellow building. That is almost to half. It's not all the way to half, but I'm going to put it over here because I don't want it to look too small. I need some space. I think I'm going to squeeze the tree in the background. That's what I'm going to do. See the tree space? I'm going to squeeze it over here because I don't need as much of that. Okay. And then the top of the yellow building, this part, instead of having this angle, if you look, it's a little bit less of an angle, more like this, but down. Here. Down. Okay. I didn't take out my eraser. Shh, 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 shh. But if this is going to be confusing, you can erase it. All right. 1, 2, and I need one more building here. Well, 2 more actually that show the perspective. That red one is trickier because it has an interesting roof. I like that roof. It can make the whole picture a little bit more interesting. I'm fixing this. I'm fixing my perspective here. Not quite. This part comes down. Yeah. More like that. It has a little bit more angle than I'm thinking. Okay. So here we are slanting down slightly. The red building, it has some slanting down, but only on the side that's going down the street. The part that is facing us is not slanting down. But let's start with the sides of the building first. The side of the building is overlapping with the yellow one just a little bit. Put that vertical. Vertical, stay vertical. That's another problem I see. It's kind of funny, but I will see students will maybe they have the road looks correct, right? The road looks correct, but then the buildings, they put them like this, sideways. Oops. Leaning Tower of Pisa. Oh no, I'm going to fall over. Okay. Okay, so that's another thing we want to avoid is having leaning buildings. So if you have a vertical part, you want it to stay vertical. One thing about pictures, photographs, is I will notice that it warps it a little bit. It gets a little bit stretchy with the perspective, and you will see that some buildings look like they're leaning, like this one over here. In the photograph, notice how it looks like there's a little bit more of the building up here than down here. It has to do with how the camera takes the photo. But if we make it vertical, it will look more correct for how it looks in real life. Okay, so vertical, stay vertical. Top and bottom are slanted. Check your perspective. Okay, now continuing. Here's this side of the building. I need the other side. Think. Where is the other side? How far is it? Okay, and how tall is the building? If I look at the edge of my yellow building here, and I look at the top of the red building, oh, it's actually about the same. Right? I'm comparing what is higher, what is lower. Measure. How far away is it? Okay, so it's over here. Oh, okay. And it's slanted. It's easier for me to start off just thinking about the angle overall. And then as I'm painting, to fix the angles, so to speak, to make them more correct as I'm painting, because I can go back and forth on this part and make the details there. First, the overall, then the details. Okay. Okay, that part is coming. That part is facing me, so it's not going down the street. It does not have a big angle, but the part on the side of the street will. Something like that. Okay, and in the picture it's a little bit difficult to see the side of that building. I'm marking for where the bottom is touching the sidewalk. Okay, and I will do one more right here. That white building that's behind it. I look, where is it touching? The red one? Oh, it's about the same height as this one. So where this one is, it's just a smidge taller, but if I go over and up just a little bit, I think compare. Angles, comparisons all the time. And then what is the angle, I think to myself? Oh, a little bit more of an angle than this one. But not like this, right? Too much. Not enough. A little bit. Small angle. It's a little bit more like this angle here. Okay. And it's skinny. Remember that it's in perspective. So we want to make it big like this, but it's very skinny. It's very skinny. Like this. Okay, and make sure you've left enough room for the tree, which is back here in that area. And there's another tree over here. Having different shapes to break up a picture can make it more interesting to look at too. So if I have some buildings, but now I have an organic shaped tree, it's more interesting. Oh, building tree. Road goes in, but not out. Only over to here. Great! We are ready for the next step. We're ready for our color mixing. Now, you don't need a lot of lines on here to start out with, but you do need some basic lines. Make sure you take the time. So this is not part of it here, not this line here. But make sure you take the time to check all of the angles and put them in correctly. That's the back part of that street underneath the tree, in case you're wondering what I'm doing. Because if the angles are wrong, you end up with this type of building, or this type of building, or this type of road, or trees like this. But you want to get something more like this. Now I have the image of the small oil sketch back up here. And the reason why is because this is more simplified for us to look at as far as painting. It doesn't have the stop sign in there. And another thing about photographs is they don't capture some of the lighting quite as well. They tend to flatten out the lighting, whereas when you look at something in real life, certain things look darker or lighter. And here I'm going to use the painting for the colors that I'm seeing. So to start off with, I will paint the yellow for this building and this part of the building as well. We looked at how to mix the colors. You created your color chart. Your color chart. So now you can look at your color chart and think, okay, what color is it? Is it this one? This one, this one, this yellow? Is it more like this yellow? Right? Is it more like that? And once you have looked to see which color it's closer to, now you know how to mix it. You already know how to mix it. You know that it's not going to be this, right? It's not going to be more blue. It is basically yellow, but it's not as bright as just the yellow by itself. Oh, okay. So it's pretty yellow, but it's not quite like that. Okay, did I add white? Okay, that doesn't look quite like it either. It's somewhere in between this yellow and this yellow. Okay. So now you will know how to mix the correct yellow colors. Start with yellow. If I wanted to get a little closer to that, what I added was the brown, and then I added some white. So it's how much brown and how much white to add to the yellow. Now, when I mix it, here I have yellow and I've added a little brown to it. I'm also going to add a little bit of white to it. This is mainly yellow, but I can check and see, okay? Check and see the color. And a lot of times we get really caught up on exactly what color it is. But it's more important to check your value. First, make sure you check that the value is correct. If the color is a little bit off, okay. But if the value is too far off, then it ends up looking wrong. Because with the lighting, you can see in the photograph and you can see in the oil sketch I've made here how the light is shining. So the light is behind the buildings. It's shining towards this direction. So it's shining down onto the street, but you can see some shadow on here. Oh, let me point up so you can see my drawing. Okay, so the light is coming over the buildings down onto the street here. This side of the building is in shadow. This part of the sidewalk is in shadow. But this part is in light. So you can see the difference. If I'm thinking, okay, how light or dark am I going to make it? This and this have to be darker than this. So even if my color, just say I could turn this into a pink building. It's okay, I could do that. But I have to make sure that it's a bit darker because it's in shadow than here. Okay. But mixing the color yellow with a little bit of white and a little bit of brown. Partly that's because it's in shadow. When I looked at this building when it was morning and it's in light, then it looks more like, in the morning it looks more like this one, yellow plus white. But because it's in the afternoon and it's in shadow, it's a little bit darker. So adding a little brown helps with that. Okay, now I'm going to put that on. I want to choose a larger brush because I'm blocking in. No details to start off with. I'm just thinking about the building itself. And it's okay if I'm going over the lines because I'm going to cover up all of these lines. I want them all to go away in the end anyway. I don't want to see them. I'm not thinking about the windows. Those are for later. Okay. And when I first put it on, if I think, oh, it's too dark, well, remember the background is white right now. Once everything gets covered up, this is really not a very dark color. Okay. And then next, I will think about the darker areas on the tree. You don't have to go in this order, actually. I think I've talked about background to foreground, and I didn't really do that. I started with the biggest shape first in this case, but anyway. Okay, so for the tree, the darker green on the tree, then I can think, is it like this? It's not light, right? It's not a light green. Is it like this? Is it like this? Is it like this? And think, okay, what does it look like? In my picture, the way I have it is a green that's a little bit more blue. But it also has some brown. So there's blue and there's yellow, right? If that's about the same amount of blue and yellow, I get a green that's medium. But if I wanted to go more towards the blue-green, which is what I wanted to do, I can add a little more blue. Okay, and I know it's kind of dark in here, so it's harder to see. Let me try something. Okay, I think maybe the lighting is a little bit better. Okay, I have this giant pile of brown here that I made, so I get to use it. Lots of brown. It's just made with the 3 colors that I already have. So here it is. It's darker. I don't want it to be lightened up because it's the dark area of the tree, but I can check, right? Because as I'm going into the background, sometimes it gets so far away that it looks lighter. It's atmospheric, so I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but I can check here and see, is this the darkness I want? Yes, it is. I'm going to keep it like this, but I want to put this here so that we think about it. Oh, yes, I'm checking. Is it as dark as I want it to be? Darker areas on the tree. And the one in the background. Okay, you might notice I didn't go all the way to the top of the tree because the tree is round. Think about the apple and the teapot. The tree is also rounded, even though it's made up of a lot of little leaves. So when the light is shining on the top, it's lighter up there. Okay, I think I'll do some blue for the sky. Let's do it. Okay, we know the sky is blue, but which blue? Which blue? Oh, okay, let me see. Which blue is it going to be? Just blue? Is it blue purple? Is it blue green? We can think about it. It will be mostly blue. It's very light, so I definitely want to add white. And I want to add more white than I added here because look how dark that still looks compared to the sky. So it has to be a lot of white. But I know I'm going in that direction when I'm mixing it. So lots of white. And check to see that it is light enough. See if it's right. Okay, my painting is a little bit more gray. I didn't make the sky totally just blue. I made it a little bit grayed out. So I'm going to do that. Right, it's very light. This is like a number 1 on here. I don't need it to be just plain white, right? Sometimes it's, oh, the sky is so bright. Oh, or you make it, it's just blue and it's dark blue. It's, oh no, the sky ended up way too dark. Okay, I think I'll use that. Okay, and if I need to adjust as I'm going along, I can. But it's good if you start off close to what you want it to be, because just say you make the sky very dark to start with. It will be hard. It will be very difficult to correct it if it's too different from what it should have been. But if it's a little different, it's okay. It's easy to change. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is pause the video or skip some parts and make it a little bit quicker for the sake of the recording, because otherwise you'll be watching the recording for, I don't know, 3 hours. Not really, but it will get a little bit long. So there are some parts where I will finish off adding the color and then I will, show you the next one. That's what I'm going to do now. Okay, next I am going to do a red color for this building. And you are also going to see the red color for this doorway, which I'll do later. And for this building over here, that's also got red. One thing that can be hard to see in the photograph is how this building has the two sides. The one side is lighter because, oh, you can't really see it in here. But the one side is lighter because it has the sun shining on it a little bit more, and then this side is darker. When I look at my colors, I think about what type of red it is. Is it more orange? Is it more purple? No, it's pretty red, but it's not super bright. It has brown in it. So if I look, oh, this is closer to the color that I want, red and some brown in it. But for the area that's lighter, it's not quite as dark. I want to lighten it up. It's still not a bright red like this or a red plus white like this. It's more of a dull looking red for the brick. So red plus brown and white for the lighter side. I've already mixed that up here. Red plus brown and white, and I need to check to see if it is lighter or darker. Is it correct compared to everything around it? Okay, this is my sky. That building is definitely much darker than the sky. Good. It has to stay darker than the sky. It's darker than the yellow building. Okay, so I can compare. Did I make it correctly? Okay, mine is ready. So I'm going to put it onto my painting using my large brush. The lighter side of the building. And the darker side of the building. And also this building on the side, most of that is red as well. Okay, next I'm going to work on the street and the sidewalks. Here's where I'm also thinking how light, how dark, what color. I have the sidewalk is a light gray, right? If I just look at it in real life, I say, oh, that's a light gray sidewalk. But the part that's in shadow is darker than the part that's in light and the other part that's in light. This is made out of old bricks. That's why it's kind of a pink red color. But you don't have to use that color. If it seems like, oh, I don't want the street to be that color, you can change it. but you do want to keep it fairly light because it's in sunlight, except for right here. This is part of the shadow coming from down from the building where the light is not hitting it. So there's a little shadow here, but that's mostly light as well. I have some colors mixed up down here that we can think about. Oh, this looks purple. Right? But it looks like a gray purple. If I look at the color chart here and think about what is the color of the street, it's kind of closer to this, which is actually blue with brown and white. It makes a cool gray color. So if you want a gray that looks cooler, more purple, more blue, okay, there you go. This one over here also is a nice cool gray, which is the blue-purple plus brown and white. But see how this might not be light enough, right? If it's not light enough, then I just need to add a little bit more white to make the color I want. Okay, over here, I have the street. I think I've made it probably a little bit too pink there. I think I need to make it a little bit more brown for my street. I don't want it to totally look pink. I want it to look like old bricks. Okay. But I think, okay, what color is my street? I can look at the photograph and see, okay, is it more like this? Is it more like this? Which one is it more like? Okay, so those are very similar colors. One of those is red plus brown and white. One of those is the red-orange plus brown and white. Okay, so then you will know how to mix it and make sure that you're checking if it's light enough, because if I use this color on my street, this is the lighter side of the brick building. Oh no, it will be way too dark. So the street that has the light shining on it, it has to be lighter. So I compare. Oh, okay, it has to be lighter than my building, otherwise it doesn't look right. Okay, and the light side of the sidewalk has to be lighter than the dark part of the sidewalk. You can see that I'm using a yellow here. Maybe it's a little bit too yellow, right? I'm thinking about it. I go, oh, it still looks a little bit too yellow, not quite brown enough, right? The sidewalk maybe is not quite so bright. I don't want it quite so bright, so. And then you might notice something funny. What? Why do you have purple sidewalk and yellow sidewalk? Isn't it gray? But the interesting thing about when the sun is shining outside, a lot of times the shadow areas will look more bluish or purple, and the parts where the light is shining on it might look more yellow. Oh, yeah, it's an interesting thing that happens. But take a photograph and look, or look with your eyes when you're out and see, does it look like that? Okay, is this lighter than this? I compare. Yes. Yes, the light area of the sidewalk has to be lighter than the shadow area of the sidewalk. Okay, I can compare. Yes, okay, that's number 1 for the light area, and that might be number 4 for the dark area of the sidewalk. I have to show the difference. Okay, so now I will put it up on my picture. The shadow where the building is covering the sidewalk. Okay, this part of the building, that part of the sidewalk will also be in shadow. If you put it in light, it will look funny. Why is it one part light, one part shadow? Okay. And the shadow comes out on the sidewalk like that. This is a curb. It has a shadow. I actually used some more brown when I did it on mine. Okay, this is the light area of the sidewalk. See here, there's a space where the sun can shine, so the sidewalk got lighter. And this area is lighter. Okay, and the road. The light is shining on the road. And then there's also a shadow area that's partly on the road. I mixed a little bit of brown into the color I made for the road. This still looks kind of pink, huh? And it's too dark. See that? It looks too dark. And my light areas of the road look too dark. But I'm going to wait until I cover up my white areas here first. And then we will see if it still looks too dark. Because that is the problem I run into. I go, oh no, the color is too dark. But once I cover up my white areas, then suddenly it doesn't look quite as dark anymore. Yeah, and I want to avoid making everything all very light and very dark. Too much contrast, right? If everything is either extremely light or extremely dark, I have a lot of contrast and I don't get the middle values like 4, 5, 6, and 7. I want to make sure I have the different values correct on there. Okay, so I've still got some of this building here. I've got the top part of these trees. I'm going to go for this building. Notice how the building in the photograph, you look and you say, that's a white building, or it's very light gray, the building, right? But when the shadow is on it, it gets darker. So it's not going to be a number 1 value. It's going to be a number 3 or a number 4, actually closer to number 4 because it's in the shadow. So instead of white, because of the shadow, it turns gray. Just like this here. That shadow is still looking kind of purple to me. It's a little bit too purple. Now, if something is too purple, use the opposite. That's yellow. Okay, so another thing about colors is if it's too much of some color, use the opposite if you want it to go away from that. So if it's too yellow, use the opposite, purple. Purple is red plus blue. If it's too green, use red. If it's too orange, use blue. If it's too blue, use orange. So the opposite color. If it's too one thing, find the opposite and add some of that to it. So if that happens to you, like it's happening to me, I think, oh, because of this is so yellow, it makes the purple in here look even more purple. So if I make my purple color a little bit more yellow, then it won't look as purple next to it. Yeah, see, now it looks gray because I added a little yellow. So that's a little tip for you as well. Okay, so now on to the white building, but it is gray. Remember I was saying about the cool gray. If you want a cool gray color, it is blue with some brown and some white. But you may have to play around with it a little to get it to look correct. Let's see what I've got. Okay, it looks very blue right now. Probably too blue to me. Oh, now it's too brown. Add a little bit more. Okay, and it looks like a number 5 to me. This looks like a number 5. That means it's a little bit too dark. So if I put some white in there, aha, it should get to 4, which it did. Okay, so the white building, which is actually, when we paint it, it's gray. And the color looks very similar to the sidewalk, which is also gray. When it's in shadow, it gets darker. It looks gray. Okay. Here's some of the sidewalk going back. Okay. So I've almost got my white areas covered. You'll notice I've got this area over here. I used something that's kind of like this because it was a white that's in shadow. That might be a little bit too purple. Let's try this here. That's better. That was a detail on the wall. It looks kind of like a pipe. And then I also need the light areas of the tree. And remember how I said that when the top of the tree is lighter, it is, or the parts that are lighter, they look more yellow. If I take some of this color and I add yellow, I probably will get the color I'm looking for or close to it, but it might not be the right value. Okay, so when I look to see, did I get it? Close. Not yet. I actually need to add some white to make it correct. Has to be lighter than the dark area. Okay, so you're thinking, what did you just mix? You just took some of the other color. Okay, here, let's find out. What did I do? It's green. It's more of a yellow green, not so blue, more yellow in the green, but it's not as bright as this one. Oops, that's still wet because I just painted it yesterday. I shouldn't touch it. Okay, so that is a yellow-green plus white, and it has a little bit of brown in it because I didn't have the trees super bright. Okay, and add that in. Probably needs a little more yellow. It looks kind of dull. And it's not quite light enough. No. I'm thinking about Bob Ross. I don't know if you know Bob Ross. He has to make happy trees. So I have to make sure my trees are happy? No? Something? A joke? Okay. Make sure the dark areas are there. Underneath the tree, it's mostly covered. I didn't quite get this part here. This is actually in shadow, so I'm using the darker red down here. And this is actually part of the sidewalk. I know I'm making, this is, if the top part is flat because it's facing you, the bottom part of that building needs to be flat facing you as well. Otherwise it will also look weird for perspective. Okay, and now we've just got a little bit over here. There's some sunlight shining through in the background. I'm trying to think of what color to make it. Maybe I should take a look at the photo. Oh, okay, more like the street. But you can see the difference in the colors that I'm choosing here too. Right? The picture is a little bit more dull. It's not as vibrant. And when we see it in person, we might see more, it might be more colorful. Okay, now once I've got all of the parts of the picture covered, I can begin to add details. What details you put in, it depends on which of the details you want in the picture. When I did my example, I put the street lights, I put these potted plants that are by the building, I put windows I put this doorway, the edge of the sidewalk. The edge of the sidewalk is very helpful. Otherwise, see how it looks kind of flat here? But if I add the edge of the sidewalk, then it doesn't look so flat. So I'm going to take some of my darker color, add a little bit of brown to that. Notice how when I just make that edge of the sidewalk, suddenly it starts to look 3D. Oh! Okay, so little things like that are helpful. So what you put in, what details you put in, it's up to you what you want to do with the details. But one thing you have to pay attention to, perspective. Because the windows, if you go like this, window, 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 straight across, it will look wrong. And then your hard work is ruined. Ah! Better to have no windows than to have wrong perspective windows. Look at how the windows are diagonal. Just like the top of the building. The top of the building is diagonal. The top of the windows are diagonal. The bottom of the windows are diagonal. So once again, you have to check what is the angle for the top of the windows. What is the angle for the bottom of the windows? They don't have to be rounded windows. You could have circle windows. You can have rectangle windows. But what you need is always that they are in the correct perspective. Trees, you don't need to worry about it so much. They're lumpy. It's freeform. It doesn't matter. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and add some of the details in, but I'm not going to add as many details as I've got in this one because I know that it can take a long time to do that. But so that you can see it getting to be a little bit more finished looking. The trees, I will make sure I have more blending and I'm turning the form, making it look more rounded. But I can put a few pieces of the greenery in. I will put some details over here on this building. I will stay with the larger brush for right now, but I might switch to a smaller brush as well. So it helps to not have the tree look perfectly round, because when it does, then it doesn't look like a tree, it looks like a ball. I'm using some brown here too for the really dark areas, some dark green and dark brown. I can't really see the, what do you call it, the branches here. Maybe if you zoom in you might see some branches. I'm going to imagine that I see a couple of branches here. And put a few details. Let's see if I can zoom in more while I'm doing this. That's the shadow underneath the roof. Okay, some windows. Oh, and the edge, the top edge here. Some shadows, windows. Okay, the whiter part. Some whiter parts on here, but not really white, right? More gray. That one, that part should be a little lighter. Lighter gray, more sunshine. Okay. This part can be darker gray. And the sky, I can fix some of my edges here, how I want them to be. If that's too complicated, right, it's, oh, too much messing around with that roof, then don't put that detail. If it's getting too complicated. Because it's better to do it a bit more simply, but do it well, than to do it complicated, but it's in the wrong place. Okay, a little bit of variety on the tree. now the yellow building. Okay, I'm looking at the angle. There's a awning coming out, but I don't want it to be the wrong angle. Don't make the awning if you have the wrong angle. Make it the correct angle. Look for the angle before you do it. There. Window. Too big. My brush will be too big now. Okay, I'm gonna pick a smaller one. Otherwise my window will get messy. Think about the top and bottom and sides of the window. What direction it goes. This window, the bottom of it goes up slightly because of perspective. Okay. Has some edges on there. That just makes it look a little bit more detailed if I have something around the outside of the window. There is something there, but then you go, oh, I see. It's a window. Okay, and the detail up here. Check the angle. I've already done that. That was too dark. This part here is too dark, so I'm lightening it, but not as light as the sky. I have to remember that the sky has to be lighter than the shadow areas. So some of these yellow areas, they start to look a bit light overall. But if it's too light, I can fix it, right? Darken it. That is not darkening it. Okay, I just mixed a color. Let me check. That's darker. Probably too much darker though. Try again. Better. Let's see. Yeah. More like that. Then it will look like it's in shadow. Okay, so if you find something is too light or too dark, you can also change it. Okay, over here, a door. Remember, it's in perspective, so it will look thin. Even though it's a door, it will look thin, like, oh, I can't fit through there. Okay, and I didn't make the awning quite long enough. It's actually very big. Keep the angle the same. Shadow underneath it. Okay, I'll add some windows up here, but I think I will simplify those and not make them rounded at the top because that's a little trickier, but you can do that. Remember that the windows are thin and they are in perspective. Let me see if I can make this show the picture a little better so that it doesn't look as sideways. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so that's two windows. I can keep going, or I can group them like there's two windows, two windows, two windows. I like that idea. Okay. As the windows are coming towards me, they will look a little bit bigger. See this? Oh, I'm starting the windows, the top of the windows at different places for perspective. Where is the top? Where is the bottom? The bottom part, I have it a little bit off, but I'm going to fix it. Okay, and I'll put a little bit of the white, not white, the gray. That is like white. Oh, it's not light enough. Okay, let me fix that. See, it blends together. It's supposed to look lighter than the window, because the window is a shadow. It's dark inside. Aha! And what really helps it look more three-dimensional is on the outside of the casing, if there's a little shadow. Oh, it looks more 3D. Especially if I just touch it a little like that, but not too much, right? That's all in shadow, so I can't really brighten it very much. So that gives me a chance to fix it a little bit and make it look like the perspective is working. There, this part still looks kind of bare, but our video is getting kind of long. So what I'm going to do is end the video here, but I'll add a few more pieces in there for the finished picture. But you get the idea, because if you say you put a plant here, it's like this, and it's in shadow, it's mostly dark. You don't have to worry about the perspective so much. Just, oh, it's, you know, a little bit lighter on the top because there will be more sun hitting it on the top even though it's still in the shadow. Okay, so here it is, how to draw a street with buildings.